Salutations, respected viewers. This is George from Ireland, and in this video I'm going to explain why Oscar Wilde ought to be regarded as a British writer, which is not to say that he was not Irish. There's this false dichotomy that one can be British or Irish, but not both. They can overlap. Anyway, so who was Oscar Wilde? Just in case some of my viewers aren't aware. Well, he was a man who was born in Dublin in 1854, if I've got that right. He came from a well-to-do family. His father was the royal physician in Ireland, so celebrated as the best doctor in Ireland. His father was a surgeon, so when Queen Victoria came to Ireland, he was her personal doctor. This fabulous surgeon is said to have made a fortune with his knife and lost it with his fork, because Oscar Wilde's father, Sir William Wilde, was a notorious womanizer and had children out of wedlock. But Wilde had an unusual upbringing because his mother had several sons and she wanted her daughters to dress him in girls' clothes, which may have affected him, or perhaps something was genetic, because Oscar Wilde was well known to be homosexual. Wilde had distant English and Dutch ancestry. Some of his ancestors, the Wilde ones, came to Ireland in the 17th century with William of Orange, something that most of us prefer to overlook these days. So Wilde came from a Church of Ireland family. That's the major Protestant denomination in Ireland. And Protestants were a small minority in Ireland. Well, not that small, perhaps 30% of the population, tops, maybe 25%. So we were part of the United Kingdom. The whole of Ireland was part of the UK at the time. And not that many people questioned that. There were home rulers who wanted devolution within the United Kingdom, not an actual split. There are fewer Republicans who wanted total separation from our kith and kin in that isle to the east. So some people in Ireland regard themselves as being British as well as Irish. So the Protestants tended to do, particularly upper class ones in Dublin, was a typical British city. You could read Dublin Made by Todd Andrews. And Todd Andrews is born in 1900. He was an IRA man later, and he talked about Dublin of his youth before the Easter Rising, said it was a British city. That's a direct quotation from Todd Andrews. So much more so in the 19th century when Wilde was around. So Wilde spoke English. He did not speak Irish. Now, one does not need to speak Irish in order to be Irish. I'm a case in point. Just seeing himself as fully part of the UK. Anyway, he went to Trinity College Dublin, which is the most estimable university in Ireland. Well, there weren't many in those days. There was that one, and then the Royal University of Ireland. Age 21, he graduated, carrying off all the glittering prizes from Trinity, where he'd mainly read classics. That was the mainstay of education, was Latin and ancient Greek. And then he went to Magdalen College, Oxford. So from the age of 21, he almost never lived in Ireland, seldom visited Ireland even. So he spent the remainder of his life in Oxford, London, and latterly Paris. We'll get onto that. So Wilde is best known as a playwright, and occasionally he penned short stories aimed at children, and his dramas, they are not on specifically Irish themes. They could be about Ireland, they could be about Great Britain. It doesn't say. Some of his novels are about London, let's say The Picture of Dorian Gray, or that one with Lady Bracknell, The Importance of Being Earnest, mentions London and various places in England. Some of these are universal themes, but the locale is England, if any's mentioned at all. That was his milieu, I suppose. It was well known he's Irish, and he played that up sometimes, and that was seen to be a charming aspect of his personality. He lived on Tite Street in Chelsea, London, in a house that still stands. I could show you where it is. It's honoured with a blue plaque. And you may know he got himself into trouble when he unwisely took out a libel action against the Marquis of Salisbury. Marquis of Queensberry. Lord Queensberry is the chap who came up with the rules of boxing, the Marquis of Queensberry rules, because this man knew that Wilde was having a gay affair with his son, and that's why he left that note in Wilde's club to Oscar Wilde posing as a Sondermite. There was that misspelling. Despite being an Oxford graduate, Lord Queensberry made that mistake. And anyway, I won't go into the libel trial where he was prosecuted by his former Trinity friend, Edward Henry Carson, and went to prison. And, well, what proves he's British yet again is Oscar Wilde was released from prison for gross indecency. He did what a Briton does when in sexual disgrace. He moved to France, and that's where he lived out his days in relative penury in Paris. And his famous last words were, looking at some ghastly wallpaper, either that wallpaper goes or I do, and that's why he's interred at Père Lachaise Cemetery. I've visited his grave, and his sons took their mother's maiden name. I believe it was Lloyd. So he could be certainly regarded as a British writer, which is not denying his Irishness. But he was born in Ireland, was part of the United Kingdom. He lived in Ireland as well as in Great Britain. So you could live in Ireland your entire life and be British as well as being Irish. The fascinating thing is that in the 19th century and well into the 20th century, many Unionist loyalists called themselves Irish. Like there was a Unionist organisation, the Irish Loyal and Patriotic Union, or there was an Orange Lodge that wrote to the Queen in the 19th century saying, "We are proud Irishmen," blah, blah, blah. Or outside Belfast City Hall, on the pedestal of the Marquis of Dufferin and Ava, it says, "A great Irishman," and so on. So then Unionists and Loyalists have felt that the word Irish has been co-opted by nationalism and republicanism, and to say one's Irish is taken to imply that one wishes Ireland to be separate from Great Britain. So those are some of the reasons why Oscar Wilde's O'Flaherty Wilde ought to be regarded as a British writer.